Good evening, everybody. It's 8 p.m. here in Japan. So I would like to welcome you to this week's Monday Zen and Zazen class. Today I will talk about the Hokyo Zammai, the precious mirror Samadhi. But before that, as always, let's sit together for 30 minutes. Thank you for joining. So today I want to talk again about the precious mirror Samadhi. We are approaching the end. For a long time during the central portion of the text I was talking about the 5 ranks by Tosan or Chinese Dongshan, which were basically the relative inside the absolute and the absolute inside the relative, starting from or getting out of the absolute and arriving in the relative. Those were the first four, and then number 5 would be going beyond both or arriving in harmony. And actually, as I said before, there's 2 different systems of 5 ranks, or the Australian Zen teacher Bollitter calls them cycles. One is the cycle of the absolute and the relative, or the contingent and the essential. The second one, Bollitter calls the cycle of merit. The difference between the 2 is that the first one, absolute and relative, each of the 5 ranks is equal. They're different perspectives on the same landscape, but each perspective is kind of equal. There's not a superior perspective and an inferior perspective. While with the final cycle of merit, it's kind of stages, and in a way they correspond to the 10 ox herding pictures. I wrote them on this paper. I will hold them into the camera once more. So first would be orientation. This corresponds probably to the first ox herding picture. You're looking for the Buddha way. You're looking for an answer. The second is service, following the Buddha way, giving everything into the practice. And you can also make a connection to the Genjo Koan. Following the Buddha way means to follow yourself, study yourself. But to study yourself means to forget yourself. And then the third one, which Bollitter calls merit, would be finding the ox, grasping the ox finally. Or in the case of the Genjo Koan, it would be forgetting yourself means to be authenticated by the 10,000 dharmas, to kind of, witness yourself in the mirror of the 10,000 dharmas. And then number 4 is shared merit. Basically, you share it with others. The dropping of your mind and body. Your mind and body drop off, but at the same time, that makes the body and mind of others drop off. You share it. And the last is merit above merit. You go beyond that. The traces of enlightenment disappear, but the disappeared traces continue forever and ever, is what Dogen Zenji writes in the Genjo Koan. And maybe in the beginning, I want to show you where I think these 5 stages of merit correspond to in the text we are reading right now. Last time I was talking about this section here. Now there are sudden and gradual in which teachings and approaches arise. There are many ways, there are many paths that lead up to the same mountain. With teachings and approaches distinguished, each has its standards. They all lead up the same mountain, but there are different paths. And there's different difficulties. And sometimes you see from the mountaintop, maybe you see the same landscape, but in between you see different landscapes. So there are differences. Whether teachings and approaches are mastered or not, reality constantly flows. Outside still and inside trembling, like tethered colts or cowering rats. The ancient sages grieved for them and offered them the Dharma. And I would say that's the part that's about orientation. You're still looking for your way. And last year, I was actually commenting about the same text on my German channel. So I did the explanation in German, but I forgot most of that. And today in the afternoon, I checked what I said last summer. And I realized, well, I said mostly the same, which I explained this year in English. But one thing that I didn't explain in English, which I said in German, about the colts, the tethered colts or cowering rats. Colt is an English word that I was not quite familiar with, but I think it means a young horse, a very energetic wild horse. And for some people, sitting a session or even sitting only 30 minutes of Zazen is, how do you say, a big challenge, because they want to move. I want to go outside. I want to be active. They feel like a colt, but Zazen takes my freedom. While the cowering rats, that reminded me of myself in the beginning. Most of the time, I enjoyed Zazen. I felt that I couldn't be more myself outside of Zazen. So when I'm sitting Zazen, I feel myself. And so, for example, during session, when for 5 days or 7 days I can concentrate on Zazen, I enjoyed that. But in Germany, it's not like in Antaiji that session means that from 4 in the morning until 9 in the evening you only sit and you're silent. But most sessions I did in Germany, there was breaks, and in some of them people would even kind of drink and smoke and have conversations. And I hated that. I didn't come to the session to talk to people. I didn't want to drink coffee with them. I didn't smoke either. So what I did is I would look for some quiet room where I could sit for myself alone. And at one point I asked the teacher, why are these people talking and drinking and smoking during the break time? Why don't we keep the silence? Why don't we try to sit as much as possible and maybe reduce the break time? And he said, basically you're like this cowering rat. For you, Zazen is a refuge. You try to take a refuge from society. You have to learn that when you sitting is the practice, but during break time, enjoying the break time with others is the practice. So in a way you could say I was like this cowering rat. I used Zazen as a refuge. And as a teacher you have to deal with both. Those people who you have to somehow get onto the cushions, and others that you need to get off the cushion. Anyway, so that part is about orientation. And then next, the ancient sages grieved for them, offered them the Dharma. They used different skillful means to lead them. Led by their inverted views, they take black for white. Last time I said that's like the pumpkin who's only judging things from his own perspective. What is good for me is white. What is not good for me is black. But often it's the other way around. It's not about you. When inverted thinking stops, the affirming mind naturally accords. If you want to follow in the ancient tracks, please observe the sages of the past. So follow in the steps of the ancients, of the ancestors. On the verge of realizing the Buddha way, contemplated a tree for 10 kalpas. Here the subject is missing. One. So there was one person who was very close. He was very close to realizing Buddhahood. But still, he was sitting and contemplating in front of a tree for 10 kalpa. And a kalpa is a long period of time, basically like the time from the Big Bang to the Big Crunch. 10 times the universe was created and disappeared. And this person was still meditating without becoming a Buddha. Like a battle-scared tiger, like a horse with shanks gone gray. You might have realized that I changed the calligraphies in my room again. This one here, the big one, is one big character, it means tiger. And on this one, like a dragon that's diving into the water, like a tiger that's taking to the mountains. That's a quote from the Fukan Zazengi. And I put them up here because of this tiger. Like a, what does it say here in this text? Like a battle-scarred tiger. Another translation would be like a yawning tiger. Like a tiger that's opening his mouth wide and, well, yawning. Maybe because he's tired from a battle, who knows. And here, this portion that I want to talk about today, I think that corresponds to the second one, service. You give your all, you give everything. Maybe it also would correspond to when my teacher said to me in the kitchen, it's not about you. Before that, he had told me, if you don't become the Buddha, there's no Buddha. It's all about you. The Buddha way is about you. You create Antaiji. And then he tells me it's not about you. I wanted to talk a little bit about these 10 kalpas. So sitting for 10 kalpas without becoming a Buddha sounds pretty boring. It sounds pretty, how do you say, inefficient. There must be quicker ways to attain enlightenment. It should be possible in this life. Uchiyama Roshi says you should sit for 10 years, then another 10 years, and finally another 10 years. But even 30 years sounds like a lot of time. There must be a faster way. There must be a more efficient technique. I think the text here is referring to a koan that you can find in the Mumon Kan. Unfortunately, I don't know how to pronounce it in Chinese. Mumon should be woman, no gate, and Kan is barrier. So the barrier without gate, it's a famous collection of koans. And one of them is, there was a Buddha of the past who sat for 10 kalpas, and still he didn't realize his Buddhahood. And the question is, the koan is, how is that possible? Then someone is sitting for so long, is practicing for so long, and still doesn't become a Buddha. How is that possible? And the easy answer, the short answer is, well, we don't sit to become Buddhas. We sit because we are Buddhas. Zazen is an expression of Buddhahood. It's not a means to an end. We don't hope to achieve Buddhahood in 10 years or in 5 years or in 3 years. Sitting for 30 minutes is being Buddha for 30 minutes. There's another famous koan that has to do with this. There was a teacher who saw how his student, probably also during free time, during his own free time, was sitting somewhere in the garden. And the teacher sees him and asks him, what are you doing there? And he says, well, I'm practicing Zazen. And the teacher asks him, why do you do that? What's your aim with practicing Zazen? And the student says, my aim is to become a Buddha. And then the teacher grabs a roof tile that is lying around there in the garden and starts to polish it. And the student who was practicing Zazen until then looks at the teacher and thinks that's strange. Why is he polishing the tile? And he asks him, why are you polishing this tile? And the teacher says, I'm trying to make a mirror out of this tile. And the student says, but you can polish this tile as much as you want. It will never turn into a mirror. And the teacher says, you can practice as much Zazen as you want. You will never become a Buddha. And there's several ways you can look at this koan. One meaning is Zazen alone is not enough. It's not only about sitting, but the 24 hours of the day is when the practice happens. It's not our aim to sit as much as we can, but cooking, cleaning, working, spending time with your family, taking a bath, lying down and sleeping. That's all part of the practice. So that's one aspect of this koan. But the other aspect, just with the koan from the Mumonkan, is it's not about making a Buddha out of you. We don't practice to become a Buddha in the future, but when you polish the tile, the activity of polishing, that is already the activity from the mirror. The mirror and the tile were never separated. There's no need to make the tile into a mirror at some point in the future. The act of polishing, that is the activity of the mirror itself. And that means practice, selfless practice, to throw yourself into the practice. It's not about me. Even if I never become a Buddha, I give everything. So that's number 2, service. Number 3, the merit. That would correspond to something that I will get to in 2 weeks or so. When arrows meet head on, how could it be a matter of skill? Finally, you grasp the ox. Finally, you totally let go, you forget yourself, and what you were looking for, you realize it was me, basically. It was me, and everything I see and hear is just a mirror of myself. Arrows meet mid-air. The wooden man starts to sing. The stone woman gets up dancing. Until then, you practice Zazen. But now it's Zazen that's practicing Zazen. In Chinese, it's called Wu Wei, non-doing. And we know it as Wu Wei in the West as well. The wooden man gets up and sing. That's kind of non-doing expressing itself in the singing, or the stone woman gets up and dances. Non-doing expressed in the dance. And then the last stanzas here. Ministers serve their lords, children obey their parents. And just to continue in this way is called the host within the host. I will get back to that. Basically, those would be the last 2 here, sharing the merit and going beyond merit, So today, again, I already talked 20 minutes. So if you have questions, anything you would like to share about orientation, service, or merit, or something completely different. If you want to ask a question about Zazen, that's also okay. You're welcome to do so. Yes, Paul, please.
Thank you, Muhal. My question relates to Zazen. You had mentioned that practice needs to involve more than just Zazen. And I just got back from Anti-G for the first of the May retreats, and it was very affirming in that practice is more than sitting on the cushion.
Yes.
However, I found the amount of sitting we did was much more than I'm usually used to,
Yes.
and I found it very difficult by the end of the second session. So going forward in my practice away from Anti-G,
Yes.
how do I tell that line where I'm only going to sit Zazen for as long as it's comfortable, or do I continue to sit Zazen until it's painful as part of a daily practice? When do I get off? When is the right time to get off the cushion?
Good question. So, for those who don't know, in Antai you usually sit for 1 hour in the morning, then you have 10 minutes of Kinhin, and you have another 50 minutes. So, if you're used to maybe 20 or 30 minutes of Zazen at a time, it's double. But of course, you don't have to sit for 1 hour at a piece if you sit for yourself. There's the temptation for me to say just sit as long as it's comfortable for you. But maybe it would be better to say sit for as long as it feels comfortable, and then sit another 5 minutes or so. Sit, don't torment yourself, don't hurt yourself. But also these last minutes where it's not comfortable anymore and you have to give up. Like in today's talk, it would be kind of the service part. You have to give up, you have to give your all. So it's good to maybe extend your comfort zone for just a couple of minutes, say 5 minutes or so. It's not kind of like, it's not a sports competition. So it's not that the longer the better. But if you sit just a little bit longer, then it feels comfortable. It might not be a bad idea. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? Nothing? If not, well, we're approaching 9 p.m. So if there's no more questions, I would say thank you to all of you, and especially to Schwan for hosting us. Next week, I will get back to this book, to you, and in 2 weeks, we're getting back to this text, and we're getting close to the end. I might even finish in 2 weeks or so. Basically, I said most of what needs to be said today, but let's read the text until the end. And if you have wishes for anything else, like I was thinking about what I do after we finished with this, I could concentrate on this and do this every week, or if you have any wishes for other texts that I should do in a bi-weekly rhythm, of course, you're welcome to, how do you say, express those wishes. Okay. Sorry, I still have this cough. Sorry for that. But thank you once more. I hope to see you again next week. And have a good night.